So Haydan, thank you so much for joining me. And you are kicking off a whole new year of these chats. So thanks for being the debut this year.
Very welcome.
So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? Give us a little backstory.
Yes, so my name is Haydan. I am a life coach. That is what I do, and I absolutely love it. I guess a lot of people probably don't know what a life coach is. It seems to be a theme I've come across recently, and I completely understand that, because out of all the coaches I know, everyone's kind of even got their own ways of doing it. So I guess the best way I can explain it is what I do and how I work. So for me, it's all about helping people recognize their potential. My belief is that everybody has just this ridiculous potential that I just don't see many people tap into. I've just got so many people that I see who could be doing so much more than they are, but due to maybe social pressures and norms, or maybe family expectation, they don't feel able to tap into that, if it's because they don't feel like they can take risks. And instead of that, they're just stuck in a 9 to 5, and they get by. It means they can get all the things they think they're expected to have, but not really ever feel any fulfillment. So helping people get through that is basically what I do. And the way I work is it's about recognizing you're at A and understanding why that's where you are, knowing you want to be at B. And then my job is to help you build a path between the two. And on that path, there's going to be obstacles, barriers, probably a lot of fears, and being able to work with someone to uncover what they are, help overcome them, as well as have someone basically help keep you accountable throughout that journey, is why coaching works so well. Just this prolonged period of time, basically having a cheerleader with you the whole time. They're like, you can do this, working out the things that are really getting in the way and helping break them down, and just someone who can really help guide through that process. So that is exactly what I do.
That's awesome. That's so clear. I love that kind of almost visual cue, going like, this is this is point A, this is point B, like let's work through it together. That's so cool.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people get confused because of counseling and therapy and coaching. They kind of all cross over. So just as important to know what a coach isn't, and it's not a counselor or a therapist. I'm not qualified to deep dive into someone's past trauma and find out what went on as a kid, so I never would. And some people massively need that. And if someone's really struggling mental health, I always recommend that that's kind of something that they seek out. Coaching is so future focused, and it is really about what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to go, who you're trying to be, and finding someone to help you do that. So
yeah, that's a really clear distinction, actually. I think that's really useful for a lot of people. And you seem like nodding away when you were talking about that whole like 9 to 5 thing, and people just, I mean, it's just like, that's just going to resonate with just about everyone, isn't it? Because it's just it's so easy and kind of feels safe to get like caught in the day-to-day, and you wake up and you take the kids to school and you go to work and you come back and you stick on a bit of Netflix, and then before you know it, years gone past and you're like, I'm still not really like doing anything. I think it's good to kind of have these little prompts and these little reminders about, you know, when you're saying about that potential. And yeah, what a beautiful message. What a nice thing as well to be able to help people do. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very rewarding and very fulfilling. And I've been through that kind of I was going through a previous passion. I fell out of it. I got into a part-time job. I literally blinked and it had been 5 years and I was a manager in that job. And I was like, what just happened? Like, this was never the plan. And you're just like, oh dear. So yeah, feeling stuck in that, and just the way it does go. My days would just wake up, work, and go to the gym every day. And then I'd be so tired on my days off, I wouldn't do anything. And I just think, I can't sustain that for my life, or it's going to be such a waste. So yeah,
it becomes a little bit scary as well, that thought, doesn't it, of like time just passing you by. So I'm like a little bit wary of not freaking myself out about that. And also, like, so much can change, can't it, in such a short amount of time. And I find that idea quite reassuring. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, but like in 6 months time your life could look totally different, and I quite like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, just to touch on my own journey with that, I had like the idea that I had the realization and the wake up call to go, this isn't what I need to be doing. And then I was able to start taking action. And once I'd started doing that, and I knew I wanted to be a coach, and I'd made this huge investment into myself to really properly learn how to coach and not just label myself as one, go and find like go and fully study and practice and get the relevant kind of qualifications. Once I had done that, within maybe 4 or 5 months, I'd maybe within 3 months, I was like ready to like quit my job. And within 4 or 5 months, I had left my job. And now it's a couple months on from that, maybe 3 or 4, and I'm fully self-employed as a life coach. And it was just that really big wake-up call and having enough leverage to act on it, taking those small actions that then led me to getting involved in that course, and then through that having the belief to go like, no, I can absolutely do this. Like, I know what I want to do. I'm doing all the stuff that will lead me to that. So all that's left now is for me to take an even bigger risk and a bigger bet on myself and go, no, I'm going to do this because I'm not going to waste any more time.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talking about action, because I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I feel like you kind of meet life halfway, don't you? Like if you show some action, if you do something, just like make that first phone call or make the initial step, then it's like you don't actually have to do 100% of the work, because then as a result of that, something will happen and then you'll react to that, and then before you know it, you're like you said, you're then 5 months down the line thinking, oh, I'm here. So
Yeah.
if you take that first step, then quite often things will just snowball out of it. And that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, like when I was setting up my personal development Facebook group, it was something that I wanted to do for ages, wasn't. And in the end, I was just like, I had some emails to send about it. And I was like, if I just send those emails, like the process has started. It's kind of like an irreversible action. Like when I started doing Instagram lives, again, I had all the guests I wanted. Like I knew what I needed to do. I knew when I could do them. That action of just emailing every single person and going, are you interested? Once that was done, there was no backing out. And it meant they would reply, I would reply, then we'd get a date in, and then it would just happen.
Yeah.
And I think as well with the action stuff and kind of meeting life halfway, it really resonates because I'm a big fan of kind of the law of attraction and like this universal, just knowing the universe working for you. But it is not like it's definitely a 50-50 split. And I feel like you have to believe in this stuff and you have to know where you're going and want it and trust it's going to work. You have to put your side in. And as long as you're taking the action, I feel like you'll get basically a 50% return from the universe helping you alongside. And I've seen it enough times with myself that I can like quite happily say it. But just sitting there being like, I want this, I want this, I want this. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but it is the first step. You have to then imagine it. You have to imagine that stuff being possible for then you can take the action. But yeah, it's so, oh my God, I could talk about the law of attraction and kind of all that kind of stuff for ages. I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm quite interested to talk a little bit because you are my first ever guy guest. So woohoo, so that's quite interesting. So I'm interested to kind of know who you work with, and if you, because obviously Tassie is all about mums, because it's such a wild journey becoming a mum and kind of everything that's involved in that. I feel very passionately about supporting mums to be aware of all this stuff and this kind of personal development stuff and looking after yourself and self-care and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm quite interested to know kind of what you do might fit into that. Do you work with mums? Do you, even just on the gender thing, like women and men, do women and men have a different approach when it comes to looking at this kind of life development stuff or this personal development or this kind of action setting or future looking? Have you kind of noticed any differences, or what's your kind of take on women and motherhood and how that fits into your work?
Yeah, so first thing I want to say is I think mums are superheroes, like they really are. I just think that the jobs they do in terms of basically letting go of everything probably they want to do and adopting that mum role, as well as adopting typically like a housekeeper role, as well as then being themselves and working.
It's
It's
a lot.
so I have the utmost respect for men. um I think in terms of like people I help, like generally speaking, I help everyone. That being said, the people who I would like work with, really the people who are just wanting to have like a bit more out of life. I think realistically, it's definitely more difficult for mums because they're juggling quite a lot, but it doesn't take them out of the picture. I think if people are aware of where they want to go and knowing they're not quite there and feel like they need that support and are willing to invest in themselves, which I think is probably one of the biggest problems, because a lot of mums probably aren't looking to invest in themselves because they're doing so much else. I
Yeah,
think
yourself comes further down the priority list. If you're going to
yeah,
think about kind of focus on prioritization and investment, you're going to put kind of everyone else first, which is kind of the idea. So
yeah, and I think in terms of kind of the looking at the difference between men and women within it, it's funny, I did my dissertation at uni on gender roles, and I just firstly think they're garbage. In terms of like the gender roles I looked at, in terms of the man supposed to be this like strong, unemotional, basically just a rock in terms of strength and emotional like range, and for the woman to be this person who just does everything else. And I don't agree with it at all, particularly as my degree was a dance degree, so I was in amongst a very female like dominated industry. And to talk to guys and say like, oh, I dance, fortunately it's not really a thing anymore, but it very much used to be that conversation of, oh, are you gay, like. But I think what I've noticed from understanding gender roles and being around lots of women in like my dance career and now being around kind of more men is I think women are definitely more open to personal development. This is just my opinion, obviously, but I feel like they're willing to kind of look into things and like read and accept help actually in that kind of sense. I know there's a lot of people who still don't, but I think with men there this expectation of not being emotional and just having everything together, sometimes it is a bit daunting for them to even consider looking at something that is going to potentially help. I definitely think it's a generational thing as well. I know looking at people in kind of my parents' age are the people who don't really even understand coaching. There's so many like family members who are like, oh, that's great what you're doing, but I know they don't really understand it completely, because their idea is like, why do people need like someone to tell them what to do? Firstly, it's not what I do, but secondly, it's not what people need. It's now available. It's so open that that kind of support is there if people are struggling with mental health or just their journey. Like, we've transitioned into such a different time now that I think for kind of my generation, it's a lot more normal that you can seek out like online coaching, and PTing is just huge. Life coaching is a thing. People like all over are getting counseling and therapy now, which is so good to see. I just don't know if that kind of generation above is that kind of has seen enough of it to feel completely comfortable with it. If that makes sense.
Really interesting point. And also I feel like probably a lot of what you do might come into kind of career and work and that kind of, you know, ditching that 9 to 5 and that kind of 50-year long career of saying the same thing. And that's a really generational thing, because like my parents and certainly their parents was like, you choose your profession, you work hard at it, you get a stable job, you do that, you retire, you know, and you do that, you come home from work, you do the gardening, all that kind of far more kind of traditional stuff. And this idea of kind of coaching and personal development and following your passions and maybe creating a life that's a little bit, you know, more on a kind of level of plane is a little bit alien, I think, sometimes to those generations. That's such a
yeah. And I love the word you used of just creating a life. There's this really cool distinguishment of life by default or life by design. And I just think that it was a bit more of a default life, and I think it was more achievable a few years ago in terms of this: you grow up, you get a job, you find a partner, you get married, you get a house, like in whichever order that takes place, have children. Like that was just this very linear path that everyone could do. House pricing was a little bit better, jobs were better, well, they weren't better paid, but money was kind of worth more than it is now. Now that's so hard. Like I have so many friends just I know all they want is to move out and get a house, and it's just almost impossible. And actually, what I'm starting to see is the people who are successful are the people who go in, I'm going to go do life my way. It's something I'm really passionate about. And it's not just going to be this one thing. I'm going to have maybe multiple revenue streams. I get to go out and do this and this. And it's a completely new way to do things and a completely new way of looking at things. And I do think that this generational kind of gap, there is such like confusion between like, wait, why aren't people just like getting in an office doing a 9 to 5 and providing for a family? Like, these people are like traveling all over the world now. What's going on? So I do think it's changed so quickly. And yeah, I do feel for my generation in terms of it is quite difficult. I'm not saying it wasn't for other generations. I'm sure I know it was. But then I also feel quite sorry for some of the older generations if I just don't think they're aware of kind of like the support available and like what they can potentially do.
Yeah. Yeah. How interesting. Yeah. And I'm just kind of sat here wondering where that kind of role of mother fits into that, because it feels like it can kind of by default fall into that very kind of traditional looking thing. So it's quite interesting to see where does motherhood sit within this kind of potentially new framework and stuff, which is quite interesting. We've got to find our way through that as well.
Yes.
Hey, have you got any kind of thoughts on, because I know we were chatting just before about kind of motherhood and your experience with mums, and kind of maybe some pointers or thoughts that you might want to throw into the ring on that subject?
Yeah, so the disclaimer I gave you earlier, I'll give again of I'm definitely not a mum and I'm never going to be able to be a mum. So yeah, that being said, like I said, I have huge respect for mums, and actually I've been around enough of them and have quite a few coaching friends who are mums that there's certain patterns I've kind of seen. And I think the biggest observation I've had for mums is just this loss of identity. I know I kind of touched on earlier, but it's this, you become a mum and everything else is kind of stripped away. It's like, and I really rate it because ultimately what you're saying is you now value something so highly, which is in effect a child, your family, that takes your like priority, it takes precedence above everything else, which is really admirable. And it's definitely a female majority who take that approach. I'm sure there are men out there who actually are very much the same, but I definitely know this is a mum thing. So I've just seen so many mums who they kind of achieve this dream of having a family, and then like you said earlier, they just become bottom of the list of priorities and this whole identity is lost. So when we first spoke about having this kind of conversation, I had to think about, in my experience, what are some of the things that I think, like some of the tips, I guess, for helping reclaim that identity.
Amazing. This sounds great. Yeah.
And I think the first one is just firstly open communication with a partner and with the family, depending on kind of that family dynamic. I just think so many mums feel like they have to do everything, but don't always talk about it. And I've seen this pattern in a few people of just, you're a mum, so you've got to do this stuff and no one helps me and blah, blah, blah. But there's never this,
the way it is.
yeah, that is it. It's the way it is. And there's never this conversation to the partner to go like, can I just give you some oversight into like how my day actually looks? Because I work 9 till 3 and then I come home and you come back to this house that is just immaculate, dinner's ready, you can sit down, have your dinner, just relax and done. What they don't see is you've had to like hoover, wash up, you've made the dinner, you've tidied up, you've had to tidy again because the kids have messed the room up, and you've got the kids to bed and you've prepped all the stuff for tomorrow. Like, that's not always seen, not because the partner isn't like, they just aren't aware because they go to work, they have a really hard day, they come home and they think this is just how it is.
Everyone's in their own lane. Do you know what? I had a really interesting conversation with my ex because the father of my daughter, we're separated. We had a really good because we're still very, very close, good friends. We had a conversation yesterday, and so we broke up when my daughter she's about 15 months, so like somewhere between 1.5. And he's very close to his family. There's a point I'm getting there. He's very close to his family. So initially when we broke up and she was very little, most of the time that he looked after her, like, you know, on his weekend or whatever, he would quite often go back to his family and they would kind of look after her together, like with his mum and with his sister and all that kind of stuff. And he was saying yesterday, he's like, it wasn't until kind of probably lockdown that I actually kind of ever looked after her on my own. And I think it was his point was, it was a real point, like realization. It was the first time when she was like probably 2, he'd had to kind of consider, oh, okay, well, okay, now I need to kind of consider her nap schedule, and what am I going to cook for her, and I need to make sure that there's some like good shopping in for her, and has she got the right clothes and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, holy shit, yeah, like that's mad that she got to 2, and that was kind of the first time that he really kind of was aware of some of that stuff you were talking about, because he was living on his own. He had to kind of keep the house tidy and do this and kind of make sure bath time, do all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's so mad, and I think quite sad in a way that kind of we were at that point where I just did all of that stuff automatically for like the first couple of years, and then he was like, oh, all this stuff as well. So like
I think above anything, it's not necessarily a telling off of like, I'm going to sit you down, I'm going to tell you everything I do, and I'm going to make you feel bad, but it's just giving the other person the opportunity to understand what's involved. And actually, if all that means is that they do a couple more jobs around the house, or maybe like start putting the kids to bed a couple nights a week, just to allow you like a bit of extra time. But if this narrative in your head is I do everything and this person does nothing, or I'm really struck, like you have to make that other person aware, or nothing's going to change, because it's not that,
like both ways as well, because then the person that's out all day, whether that's like the male partner or whoever, but whoever's out all day and isn't doing all that stuff, maybe they feel a bit left out, maybe they want to do more, they feel like they can't get, so it's like a two-way thing, isn't it, of being a little bit more aware of each other's reality.
And I think just considering kind of a family dynamic of, if it's a family with slightly older children as well, like include the children in that chat. Like again, it's not a telling off, and it's not like a boohoo poor me, it's just want to give you some insight into like what my life looks like. Like while you're upstairs playing on the PlayStation, or while you're out at the gym doing this, like this is what I'm having to do. And actually just a tiny bit of help would go such a long way. I just feel like that's one of the key elements, and probably the starting point to reclaiming some sort of identity of yourself, and not just as a mum, by ultimately spreading the load through just this open communication with loved ones.
What a nice point. Like just communicate always with everyone. That's
So the second point is just about letting go, and I think this is probably going to be one that is the hardest for people to do. And it's so much easier for me to sit here and say this because I let go of a lot. But what I mean by letting go is just letting go of this expectation of like perfection. I know that like a tidy house is a great thing to have, and it feels good and you want to take pride in it, but if you hoovering every day is meaning you don't get the chance to sit down and have a cup of tea, like if the rug in the middle of the room needs to stay dirty for a day, but it means you get an opportunity to just sit and watch your program, or have a cup of tea, or go out for a walk, like take that. I just think, again, part of this persona of a mum is perfection, and it's, you want everything tidy like all the time, and you want to be on top of everything because that's what you do and that's what you're great at. But I do believe that it's often at detriment to your own kind of enjoyment and just time to take like a break. So I just think it's a really conscious thought to have. Like I said, as a 26-year-old guy, it's very easy for me to be like, don't worry about hoovering. Like, I get it. But I do just believe,
letting go of the pressure and the expectation, and buzzword, the guilt, and just letting go of that. It's, it's the habit. I think it has to start with a conscious thought, doesn't it, and then kind of keep practicing that idea of letting go. But it's
and just to share, like, I'm sure the person won't mind me sharing, but someone I'm quite close to has kind of gone through this journey. It's where a lot of this has come from, because I've managed to see it up close and hear about it a lot. So actually the first 2 points are really intertwined, of that communication to make people aware of like actually what you're having to do, and actually how overwhelming it can be. and then this letting go of not everything being perfect. There's actually this really nice formula that works in there of, if you make people aware of all the stuff you're having to do and then you don't do all of it, sometimes it magically starts to get done, which I was, when I heard about how this kind of scenario panned out, I was like, this is amazing. But actually, if someone knows that this is everything you do, and maybe you make them aware of kind of the help that's required, and then you're able to let go of certain things and go, I am going to leave this because I did make this person aware that it would be really helpful if they did it, and you can just sit in maybe the messy lounge for an evening, stuff will magically start to happen, which is great. But I do just think, I think guilt is absolutely the right word to describe it. Of, there is this tremendous guilt of not keeping maybe the house up to standard and get everything done. But again, like, where's your well-being being considered? That has to move up the chart. And like I said, if it's 30 minutes to watch something on Netflix that you wanted to watch, or if it's the opportunity to sit down and read a book, or to just have a cup of tea, like get out for a walk, whatever that is, like, that is definitely a priority over some of the daily tasks that you're doing.
100%. I think that's kind of my mission, is making those really simple little things more of a priority, like bump them up your list.
Yeah,
I think that's really important. Yeah, love that. Okay.
And the last one is about connecting to like old passions and activities, and this is kind of like a more of a reflective thing. And again, this is I'd say this is probably quite a hard one to action in theory, because there's probably more moving parts to this, but there's definitely ways to simplify it, and it is absolutely possible. But again, it's going to be something to kind of overcome. But again, something I've seen that is really powerful is just recognizing who you were pre-mum. Were you someone who was super active and got out and runs all the time and walked loads of places and went swimming? Like, were you that person? Were you someone who was so social, you were out most weekends with your friends, and coffees in the day, drinks in the night? Just considering who that person was. Were you someone who traveled loads? Did you go on all these holidays before? Now, what I'm completely aware of is when you add a child into the dynamic, you can't just go, oh my God, I used to travel loads, see you later. As great as it would be.
Together.
Yeah, I don't think that's potentially going to work. That being said, there are definitely gateway things to this, and ways to make it happen that would get you back on that path. So if I give you an example, one of my bucket list things is to go to South Africa on a safari. I want one of those luxury things where I'm in this lovely little cottage and I walk outside, have my breakfast, and there's a giraffe next to me. Like,
I was literally just going to say, there's a giraffe.
Exactly that. That's not quite in the direct future. If this year goes well, it might be, but right now it's a little bit off. What I realized was the reason I want to do that is I love nature, I want to explore, and I really love animals. So I asked myself, what's like the next best thing I could do? And I was like, I have not been to a zoo in so long. So it's like, it's not quite the same, but it's certainly in line with that. I get to go and experience like some really cool bits of nature in the form of animals, and see these like great things. There was a falconry I really wanted to go to, which is like 20 minutes from my house, that for years I've been going, oh, I really want to go here. Like, again, it's that same sort of thing. So I think if you can recognize who you were and what that identity was before you became a mum, and find out what the kind of first steps to getting back to that are, I believe you will find such fulfillment in that. So if that is, like I said, you are someone who's really social, I think that what needs to happen is there just needs to be this really conscious effort to get something in the diary. If that's a coffee with a friend, or if it's just a meal out with some friends, like, and however that has to happen, there's going to be some sacrifice. And it might be, oh, I'm going to have to ask my parents to look after my daughter, or oh, I'm going to have to see if a friend
can... and let the kids play together, and you can still have that kind of social time. You can have a coffee and a catch up.
Exactly this. If you were someone who was really active and loved the gym and you just haven't been able to go, like, this goes back to the first point of communication. Like, tell that other person and get it booked in that on certain days you can go and do that, and they're going to look after. Again, it's the theme is really prioritizing yourself.
I'm so on board with this, and I was like buzzing when you mentioned that as your third point, because I've been trying to kind of get across that idea as well, about kind of identifying those passions and then just keeping them alive. And it doesn't mean you have to do the whole thing like you say, but you can break it down into like the tiniest things. And like even with the gym stuff, even if you're not physically doing it, and logistically at the moment it's just too difficult to get to the gym, but you can still maybe pick up like a women's health magazine and just find out the latest ideas and like maybe some new ideas for some workouts. You can, I don't know, like break it down into really micro things that maybe aren't even doing the thing, but are just keeping that interest going. And I talk about it a lot. Like I used to snowboard, and I haven't been for like too long. But even if I'm not going snowboarding, I could get my daughter involved as well. We could look at some snowboard magazines. We could watch a documentary on telly. We could, like, I don't know, make a game where we're pretending to do it. And although it's not the same, you're not going on a mountain. It's just keeping that interest alive and like and just keeping it in your mind almost, as opposed to completely letting it get dusty at the back of a shelf.
Yeah, because the risk there is you have this identity, you become a mum that gets lost, and you probably think, when the kids are older, I'll get back to that. And by the time they're older, that's like long gone, that even memory. It's like the thought of stepping on a snowboard after, I don't know, 21 years is just like absolutely not. So I just think to keep that flame burning, regardless of how big or bright it is, just to be aware of that person you were, and how can you start to bring that back in. If anyone needs a kind of exercise to do, I would just mind map that person. I would draw a nice little stick man version of yourself. I would do a mind map of everything that made you up when you, like, pre-mum, and like consider what are the hobbies you had, what are the things you did, who did you see, like what did you like, go back through some old pictures and like really reconnect with that person, then go, right, if I wanted to become that person again now, what's like the tiniest step I could take towards that?
Yeah.
And like I said, if it was just a social thing, then it's just, I just need to make the effort to see more people. In order to do that, I'm going to have to find some sort of childcare, or I'm going to have to find a scenario where we, like you said, we can have both our children there and we can sit, have a cup of tea and a catch up. Make it will maybe turn into a weekly thing. Like, who knows?
It's that action thing, isn't it? Like, you put the action out there and something happens. In lockdown as well, some of my friends did, like, we had dinner together, but like on Zoom. Like, we'd decide that we were going to cook the same thing, and then we'd like have our laptop there, and it, like, it's not like going out for dinner, but at the same time there was like 2 or 3 of us and we were kind of having this shared experience. So there are kind of ways to tick the box, or like get the fulfillment.
Yeah, there's so much available now. Like, I don't know if you've seen on Netflix, you can watch things at the same time as someone. Literally sync up your watching experience and FaceTime the person. So you can watch a film together, not together. And like, in terms of fitness, there's so much available. I am going to throw a cheeky plug in there because why not? Like, one of my friends has just launched this great platform called Fitness in 15. And I'm on there as a mindset coach, but it is literally about micro workouts, which covers HIIT, strength, core, dance, bar, yoga, breath work, sleep. Like, it covers everything.
I mean, perfect for mums.
But it's just this it's called Fitness in 15, and it's these 15-minute like micro workouts that all you've got to do is log onto the platform, go, I'm going to do a quick 15-minute dance thing or 50 minutes of yoga. And it's a great like starting point. Like you said, maybe it's just first getting the magazine and going, like, learning a bit more about their fitness stuff and feeling like you've connected back to your fitness identity. If you can't get out to the gym for an hour a couple of times a week, like, there are so many alternatives just to get started. Things like that. There's so much online. I just think until you've considered that person that you were before, it's hard to start thinking about any action you can take to get back to that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I love that point so much, and I'm 100% going to check that out as soon as I get off the call. Okay, Haydan, have you got anything that you can leave us with? Are there any final thoughts? But also, you know that I love a little homework challenge, so something that maybe I can try and that anyone else who's watching and interesting could try, like a little.
Yes, of course. So I think in terms of like a final point, I just think the overarching theme of this, and I think the overarching theme actually just goes to everyone, not just mums. It's just this theme of prioritizing yourself. I just think we all are so busy and caught up in the hustle and bustle of life and running between like everything, that to just slow down and actually take some time to yourself. There was a book on meditation I read, and this point that really stuck with me was when you're doing the washing up, so when you're washing the dishes, like just wash the dishes. And it gives you kind of advice about doing it at half speed, and it kind of doesn't make sense to be like, well, if I'm washing the dishes, then of course I'm washing the dishes, but realistically you're
Like
not.
mindfully, right?
You're washing the dishes and you're thinking about what you've got to do next, and then you're sitting down having a cup of tea and you're thinking about you've got to go and do this later and this. No, I didn't do this. Like, just wash the dishes, do it at half speed, and just be so present in that moment that it's like it is really mindful. And if you're gonna have a cup of tea, like sit down, have a cup of tea. Don't be thinking about everything else going ahead. Like, this piece about being present really links into just prioritizing yourself, I think, because it gives you the opportunity to just be in that space and time with nothing else going on. It's time for you and nothing else.
Do you know what? I feel like I directly needed that reminder today. So thank you, because my brain is just 100 miles an hour most of the time, but like especially at the moment, I think it's like the new year kicking up. And I know the benefits of doing that, being very present and mindful, but I definitely needed that reminder. So I'm going to carry that through today. So yeah, good point. Well made. Yeah.
And as for a little challenge for yourself, I was having a think about this, and there's a few things I came up with.
Okay.
But I thought I would do the one that's probably closest to me, and the one that I've put on when I did my 5-day challenge. This was part of it. And what I would love for you to try, if you already do it, I don't know because I haven't spoken to you about it, but I would love for you to try a cold shower once a day for a week. The reason I ask this is because you'll probably be aware I do my morning dips, and it is the best thing that I started doing like last year, and I've been doing it for about 6 months, and just the benefit to cold water therapy alongside this mindset of doing something as challenging as like in the morning turning the shower to complete cold and just standing there like it takes so much control, and actually just I don't know, after you've done that, nothing else in the day seems that hard because you've already done something so difficult. And I'm aware that not everyone can get to the beach and in the sea, and it is really daunting, but just have a warm shower for the last, just start with say 20 seconds, just turn it all the way cold. Only advice I'd give is just focus on your breathing. If you start gasping, it's going to be horrible. Just breathe normally, 20 seconds, see if you can up it each day. And I'd love to hear how you get on with that.
Okay, I'm going to try it, because do you know what? I have dabbled in it. I definitely had a moment of trying the cold shower thing, but I didn't stick with it. And again, like I've done some kind of lake seas dips.
Yeah.
And like love it every time. I love it. But yes, I'm going to accept the challenge of doing that more regularly. I'm going to do it every day for a week. And just like, if I can for a moment, just talking about this idea of like discomfort as well, and it being a physical and a mental challenge. I was thinking about this the other day. I might do a little blog on or something, but I was thinking about discomfort because it's so rare that I'm ever in discomfort, or like as humans that we're ever in discomfort, because we have our comfy clothes and our nice warm houses, and then we go in the car, and it's like, when are you ever kind of in discomfort? And I was thinking about it the other day because I've just started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I'm really excited about. And like I did my first class, and they were kind of having a little joke like, oh sorry, did I get you? And they're like, oh, better get used to it because you're here. And I was like, I'm up for that. I kind of want to be, I don't want to be like battered about, I don't want to be like black and blue and bruised and stuff, but at the same time I quite like the idea of experiencing a little bit of physical discomfort and like the challenge in that. And it's the same principle, I guess, isn't it, with the cold showers? It's like just to remind you that you're human and that you're an animal, and that actually you can endure a bit of discomfort and stuff along the way. I quite like the challenging aspect of that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a balance. As they say, nothing great ever comes out of comfort zones, and I fully agree. I think to be in a stupid amount of discomfort is not the right place to be. But anything you can find that, I think, I can't remember where I kind of got it from, but the kind of phrasing I use is, anytime my compass is pointing directly in between excitement and nervous, is like the perfect place for me to be.
Cool.
So to
Yeah.
give an example, I got invited bouldering, which is just like rock climbing on like an indoor wall. And when I got the message say, "Did you want to come?" I immediately was like, "No," because I know I'm garbage at it because I've done it once before and I was awful.
Yeah.
And I had to sit with it for a minute and be like, the reason I'm not doing this because I'm not very good at it. As fun as it sounds, people are going to be watching me. What if I can't do it at all? Blah blah. And that became the exact reason I did it. You kind of have to run towards that discomfort. And what happened? I wasn't as bad as I thought. I had so much fun. I'll definitely be going back again. And now I can say I'm actually capable-ish of doing it. I can kind of climb a wall. So
Yeah.
I think letting fear kind of guide your decisions is there's a massive price to pay for that. I think we don't recognize, but stepping into some sort of discomfort, whatever that is, will see you grow. My whole kind of transformation has absolutely come from just living outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah, so powerful. Oh, I love that message. What a cool thing to end on. Haydan, thank you so much for your time. I've loved this chat. I think there's some really, really juicy ideas in there and thoughts. I think people are going to really enjoy it. So thank you. I'm going to go and do my cold showers.
Nice.
And let you know how I get on.
I look forward to hearing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll speak to you very soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
So I did it. Obviously you're not coming in the shower with me, but I wanted to document the experience just a little bit. Had a nice warm shower, washed my hair, and then I flipped that switch to cold. Was it pleasant? No. But I'm determined to make it more of a habit because of the mental and the physical benefits. So do drop me and Haydan a line if you are inspired to give it a go too.